We're going to go live now to Downing Street because Catherine Forster, our political correspondent, has just left a briefing with the Prime Minister's spokesman. There's a lot going on, but Catherine, what have the government had to say, or what at least has the Prime Minister had to say about all this speculation about a winter fuel payment U-turn?
Yes, well, good afternoon from Downing Street. The speculation rife this morning that some changes in the offing, perhaps the threshold, would be raised. But the Prime Minister's official spokesman's exact words this afternoon were, the policy as set out will not be changed. Not just that it's not changing now or anytime soon, that it will not be changed. Now, the lobby briefing ran for a whole hour. That's very, very long. Obviously, a huge number of topics, especially after the local election results on Friday and that by-election. We also had the Prime Minister's press secretary there. That's something that's quite unusual, and he spoke a little bit at the beginning, and he said that they've really got loud and clear the public's impatience for change. He says, we get it. Our plan for change will deliver the changes to working people's lives they want to see. He went on to list some of the many things that they're doing, and he said, we were elected as a stable and serious party after 14 years of chaos and decline. We will not be blown off course. Also said they're not going to listen to what he called noises off, and went on to say other parties faff about with flags. We remain focused on delivering national renewal. The faff about with flags clearly taking a pop at reform after their announcement yesterday that only British flags would be flown at council offices. So also on the grooming gangs, the Prime Minister's official spokesman doesn't know if he's watched that Channel 4 documentary, but on Lucy Powell's comments and the suggestion that they had belittled the experience of victims, the Prime Minister apparently has full confidence in Lucy Powell, and she has publicly apologised, and the message seems to be move on, nothing to see here.
So the Prime Minister was so desperate for every school in the land to watch adolescents, but we don't know from the spokesperson there whether the Prime Minister has watched that Channel 4 documentary into the grooming gangs. So there you go.
Yeah, well, Catherine, thanks indeed for joining us. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Well, of course, that news on the winter fuel allowance that the government is not going to change its policy despite this speculation will come as a bit of a blow to many people. Let's speak to a pensioner now. Joining us from Newcastle is Ellen Russell. Ellen, thanks indeed for being with us. What do you make of that news that the government's going to stick to its guns on the winter fuel allowance?
I think that it's absolutely appalling that even if they had raised the threshold, pensioners in this country, if you've worked, now listen carefully here to what I'm going to say. If you've worked all your life in this country, you're on a pension of £220.20. If you have anything below £218, you can claim all of the benefits. Now, that's the people who haven't worked all of their lives in this country can claim the benefits. The hard-working people in this country who are living on 220, and we're not talking about the rich here, we're not talking about professional people, we're talking about your hairdressers, your labourers, your shop assistants, your hoteliers. You're talking about the working class people in this country that are living on they haven't been able to save money and put money into savings accounts. They're living on £221.20. And that's an impossible task, and they cannot claim another penny. That £300 winter fuel allowance was a lifeline. Get yourselves down the shopping malls. Tell the Labour government to go and say the old people who were sitting on metro, sitting on buses, sitting around this country sitting in shopping malls trying to stay warm. That's because they have to sit in the seats in the shopping malls because they can't afford to get a coffee in the Marks and Spencers or any of your shops. So they sit around the shopping malls.
Ellen, what do you make of the government's? What do you make of the government's stance, Ellen? I can hear the passion in your voice. What do you make of the government's stance? They say, you know what, we need to make savings somewhere, and this is one of the ways we can make savings. We don't have all the money in the world.
Hit the vulnerable, hit the working class, hit the WASPy. Don't pay the WASPy women their compensation when it was proved they had maladministration. The Labour government stood for 10 years with us, with the WASPy women. They're liars, they're deceived, they betrayed the country, they betrayed the working classes in this country, they betrayed the farmers, they betrayed all the small businesses. And the only people that haven't betrayed, and I'm going to leave that to your imagination because otherwise the police might come to my door.
All right, well, Ellen, thank you very much indeed for coming and sharing your thoughts so passionately on our show. Ellen Russell, really appreciate it.
Have you been getting a load of spam in your email recently? What about random calls? It's really annoying, isn't it? Data brokers are out there collecting your personal information. Anything from your email, your full name, your address, and even your political affiliation. Cyber criminals can even use AI to mimic the voices of friends and family to trick people into sending them money. And it gets even worse. People out there are getting huge loans taken out in their names without even knowing about it. But don't worry, because the sponsor of this video, Incogni, can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request that your information is removed from their databases. Incogni continues to make sure that your data is removed automatically from the internet via repeated removal requests. So, how can you get started? Well, step 1, hit the link in the description, create an Incogni account and tell us whose data you'd like removed. Step 2, grant Incogni the right to work on your behalf. Step 3, sit back, relax and watch Incogni work. They will update consistently so you know when your data has been removed. Incogni is risk-free for 30 days, so you can try it for yourself and you'll get a free refund if the service isn't for you. So take back your personal data today with Incogni. Use the code GBNews using the link in the description below and you'll get 60% off an annual payment plan.
Well, let's get the thoughts now of the former chief economist at the Cabinet Office, Jonathan Portes. Jonathan, thanks for joining us. I mean, there is a problem that the government may have run into here, which is that there was meant to be £1.4 billion saved over means testing the winter fuel allowance. But then the government launched this massive campaign for people to take up pension credit. And if everyone eligible for pension credit takes it up, will they wipe out their savings?
Yes, although to be fair, in some way, that's a policy success, right? Because what you would be doing then is taking winter fuel payment away from those people above the pension threshold, that is, pensioners who aren't particularly poor, relatively middle class, and in some cases very wealthy pensioners, and giving more money to pensioners who are genuinely poor. Remember, you could only get pension credit if your income is below about £12,000 a year. So that would be overall redistributing money from middle and well-off pensioners to poor pensioners. That in itself is a good thing. But you're right, it wouldn't achieve much in the way of savings. And the problem, of course, with making a U-turn on this is that the government, not unreasonably, said that savings were required in order to pay for some of the other things it's doing, like increasing spending on the NHS. So a complete U-turn on this, if it weren't accompanied by other measures, would risk the fiscal credibility that the government has set so much store on.
Yeah, and they clearly believed in this policy, at least to begin with. And could you argue, Jonathan, that the damage has already been done? That even if they did decide to completely backtrack on this deeply unpopular policy, that it wouldn't necessarily make a difference in the polls?
Well, I'm an economist, not a politician, but as a civil servant, my experience was that government politicians are very reluctant to U-turn, but actually, if they do U-turn and they do it properly and sensibly, then on the whole, people sort of shrug their shoulders and say, okay, they made a mistake, they admitted it, they changed it. What's wrong with that? I think people actually are quite reasonable about governments if they're honest about, if they simply go out and say, yes, we got it wrong, we're going to change the policy. Actually, on the whole, I think that tends to go down quite well. I think it's certainly better than sort of digging in and pretending that you thought it was a good idea all along, even if you have actually changed your mind.
And yet, any kind of U-turn on this would, of course, cost money that the government doesn't have. They've had to have a fiscal statement recently trying to find more cuts elsewhere. They're borrowing to the very brim, to the limit of what they can within their own rules. I mean, they'd have to raise taxes, wouldn't they?
I think, in the great scheme of things, £1 or £2 billion isn't very much, right? It's the margin of error of the OBR forecasts. So that in itself is not the problem. I think the problem is more what sort of signal do you say to the markets if you can't even if you make a cut, you make a big thing about it, and then you U-turn when you lose some local elections.
So there could be a truss effect.
Yeah, what does that say about your credibility? So I don't think they'll necessarily raise taxes to fill the hole, but they may well need to raise taxes to signal back to the markets again, actually, we are still serious about our targets of balancing the budget over the next 3 years. So I think that's a very important point.
Well, Jonathan Portis, thanks so much for joining us and talking through that particular conundrum that the Chancellor is facing.
Yeah, we're seeing some of these tax hikes aren't exactly having the intended consequences of raising more money for the Treasury. So there's that, isn't there? Oh, we'll just fill this hole with some tax rises. Oh, wait, we're losing money at the same rate.